methods in rural development. In this, we are trying to understand how we are going to define our objective in the form of a question or a some sort of descriptive statement. It can be anything. The form doesn't matter at all, but content is very important. Because the whole research process is all about logical validity and empirical verification. Because in research, there is a complete process. It's a complete process which has multiple steps, but actually, all those steps are completely interdependent. So you can't say we can skip this particular step like uh, identification of problem, and we can go for formulation of hypothesis before that. All these things are interrelated. So, in today's session, we are going to understand how we can follow this logical validity and empirical verification for attaining knowledge in our research study. The whole research study, the whole research process is basically all about this logical validity and empirical verification. That means whatever we are going to discuss has to be coming from some sort of theory, number one. It can be it can come from some real observation that we face in our real life sometimes, or it can be due to coming out of some brainstorming session when we are having those with our uh, colleagues, research fellows. There are lots of resources, but why do we call it scientific knowledge? Only because logical validity has to be established here. So, this whole research process about which we are going to talk about is actually going to be the compatibility between logical validity and empirical verification. You can understand it in terms of subjective and objective aspects of research. For instance, I am very particular about some research issue, and I find it logically valid. For instance, let's take I have been gone through a very wide stock of knowledge, that is review of literature about the relationship between health of women and education of women. These two things are clear in my mind. This is my subjective understanding. This is covering actually the first part, which is logical validity. There has to be some sort of logical deduction that is going to prove how better education status can lead to better awareness in terms of health as well as outcomes for women, because that is going to reduce their dependency on their male counterparts. So, this is a kind of empowerment of women in terms of health outcomes. But this is my subjective understanding. Only one part, which is covering logical validity, has nothing to do with scientific knowledge. Why? Because in graduation or post graduation, we study these things. All of us has been going through this process. So, what is the difference between a scientific study and something which we are reading? The second missing part, which is basically empirical verification. That means unless and until we are going to prove this logical validity, the connection between uh, better education and better health outcomes for women, particularly for rural women, has to be empirically verified. And that can be done only by conducting an empirical study. So this is whole uh, relationship between two basic dimensions of this process. First is logical validity, that is some sort of subjective understanding, and empirical or verification. That means there has to be a scientific study, and only then we can combine this subjective understanding of researcher with the objective verification of those findings so that we can relate that yes, this fact is has been proved by empiricism, and this is the reason behind this particular description. That is the relationship between education and health outcomes of rural women. So, this is just a kind of introductory exposure for all of you in this research process. It was general for making you realize how do we combine this logical validity and empirical verification. Now we are going to discuss in particular terms of and terminology of research methods in rural development, which is basically our assigned paper. So research process is apart from this logical validity and empirical verification, it is a process of self-correction. Self-correction means sometimes we start conducting a study, and on later phases, on later step, we encounter a very different kind of problem. What is that? Sometimes we feel that our data is actually only partially supporting our hypothesis. That means either some mistake has there in the sampling process or in our objective. Third, second possibility of this that of course data is showing some sort of partial direction in the same flow of our hypothesis. But actually, variables are going to perform in a different way that we have anticipated in the beginning. So, what can be done? What can be done? This whole process has to restart again. This is the process of self correction because here it doesn't matter how experienced I am or you are. The more important thing is that we have to follow these steps, and wherever we are going to encounter this kind of problem, we have to restart that research. That is why we call it a process of self correction. So the very first step in research process is basically selection of a suitable problem from the field chosen by the researcher. Although it looks very simple on this slide or whenever we are talking about, but let me tell you very frankly, this is the most difficult part of this research process, particularly for the beginner. How to select? For example, in my previous experience with your senior batch, sometimes we were receiving uh, problems formulation in the form of uh, causes of failure of a particular development program and suggestions to improve those programs. The complicated part here is in just one study, you can't cover the whole, all the dimension of a particular development program. Then how can you suggest uh, ways or alternatives for the betterment of those outcomes that are basically desired in that particular development program? So it has to be simple, precise, and clear. So this is the first step in research process, selection of a suitable problem. Uh, let's talk about also other stages together. So in this slide, you can see these 6 stages. Sometimes this number can be reduced to 5, where generalizations are not supposed to be a different stage. But here, it is good. It is basically following the simplest format, where you can see identification or selection or and formulation in just one step, and the second one is uh, formulation of hypothesis. Then third is formulation of research design. Let's discuss something again in the name of self-correction. Why we call research, social research, a self-correction process. After stage one and stage two and stage three, when we start conducting our field study, and during collection of data, we find that there is something very important, but actually we have not defined that particular variable in our research. That means we have to again restart to work on formulation of our problem, because there has to be one intervening variable that may alter our findings and outcomes of this study. For example, I have taken one example from your from the very first slide, the relationship between education and health of rural women. Of course, the whole education attainment cannot be guaranteed to be transformed in health status. There can be several intervening variables as well. In the beginning, as a beginner, when I started this study, I was not aware about it. So that part was missing. But actually, on in fourth stage, important. There can be a possibility that is literate woman cannot. I think we lost network for some few moments. We are back again.
Yes, ma'am, please proceed.
Thank you, thank you. So during my own research, when I started all those studies, I realized that access can be divided into two parts, which I have never gone through, I have never found in literature. Access can be defined by social situation, that is socio-economic indicators as well. For example, if that health facility is available in the vicinity, for instance, it's a distance of merely 1 or 2 kilometers from that particular village, that lady can manage. But if that health facility is located to some other remote location that is covering basically a distance of 10 or 12 kilometers, how education is going to help that lady? So, access can be defined into two different parts. One is physical access, that means the actual distance, geography, topography, transportation, safety of that area. For example, if that village is located in a war affected zone, it doesn't matter how educated you are. Definitely, all the health supply is going to alter your access. So, war is actually coming in social access and the geography, transportation, and that physical part of the facility is going to be the physical access. So this part, when you are there in the study, uh, only then you are going to understand that there are certain intervening variables which may alter the relationship between your important variables that already you have formulated in your hypothesis. So, what can we do? We have to immediately self-correct it. We are not required to ask our ask our seniors or teachers whether we should do it or not, because in research uh, at that level, you are the first person to encounter that kind of experience, to observe that particular process. That means you are the decision maker and you have to incorporate that intervening variable. And that means, again, you have to come back to the step one, that is selection and formulation of problem. And that means you have to define also the intervening variable. So, this is all about the process of self correction. All these steps are written for you. Then we have to understand that again and again, social research is only about uh, scientific knowledge. And what is scientific knowledge? Free from errors, free from bias, free from prejudices as much as possible. So the things that we were actually discussing a few moments back, those were basically belong to that particular a possibility of faulty stages. Sometimes data don't support or only partially support the hypothesis. I have told you how and why it is important to address this problem. Second, sufficient reasons showing error in adequate hypothesis. Third, or error in selecting a sampling design or in measurement of the key concepts or in analysis of data. Then what is the solution? Solution is to restart your study, again going back to that particular faulty stage, and after rectifying, you have to complete your research. So sometimes there is also a possibility that sampling design is creating problem for us. For example, I am talking about health and education of rural women. But actually, we are taking sample from a village which is located in the vicinity of a city. Second, another village which is located in remote area. That means there is much more possibility to understand this this these two interdependent variables in a village which is actually remotely located. So, when you are going through that formulation stage of your uh, research problem, you have to understand in a very precise understanding that how are you going to measure the relationship of those important variables in your study. In that term, hypothesis is basically all about understanding and identifying the research problem thoroughly. Thoroughly means covering all those possible dimensions where dependent, independent, and intervening variables are going to alter your findings and outcomes of the study. So, in the process of identification and formulation of research problems, the first important thing is to understand how to incorporate all those important factors. And this identification can be done by several uh, by several things. First of all, that is written there. You can have a discussion, consultation with your colleagues, seniors. For example, in this research class, when you are going through that process of dissertation, you can identify some research problem, but most of the time it be like a very simple thing. Okay, then by discussion can zero down this from general to particular because you can't conduct a complete study in the very first step because there are multiple variables. So you have to choose your own variables. You have to define your terms, concepts, whatever you are going through. Like if you are going to talk about health and education, you have to be clearly aware of what health and education means.
Ma'am, we lost your voice.
نوید الله خان سلام برسه برادر، انشالله که خوب و صحتمند باشین. از فرصت استفاده میکنیم. برای فعلا استاد نیستم، یک موضوع رو من میخواستم بگویم که از 202 MRD ما تا هنوز سلایدایش و همچنان ریکاردش پیدا نکردیم. تشکر، امرایتان یادداشت باشه برادر.
Due to
سلام ناصر
some
جان، درست است.
due to some research problem, due to some technical problem, I am shifting to another device, and I need your help to make me assure once again that you can see my slide. Let's discuss on this. One
Sorry, sir,
second.
we cannot see the slides. The slide is not available.
Let me present. I'm switching off that particular laptop and I'm switching over to the other device.
Okay,
So let me present.
okay,
And
okay,
once
sir.
I have started presenting, then please let me know.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, guess now you can see that.
Not yet, ma'am.
It is presenting. Can you see this?
Sometimes it takes time, ma'am. Let's wait a little,
Okay,
a few minutes.
okay, okay.
But in the same time, if someone is seeing the presentation, you can also let us know.
No, we cannot see the slides.
Network problem is there. Although I'm using both networks.
We can see you in two different user, ma'am, but not the slide.
Okay, okay, okay. Close one device. Yes. Can you see the slide?
No,
No. My God. Just give me 2 minutes.
ma'am, we thought that we have internet problem here in Afghanistan, but same, it's also there.
Although I don't face this problem much often, for the first time I'm experiencing it here. I don't know. Maybe the bad weather is causing problem to us.
It may be one issue.
For the first time I'm facing this.
But this problem has become our daily routine. Every day we're facing same problem.
In this age of online, that's yeah.
So now,
Yes,
we can see the slide.
Okay, let me switch off this. Otherwise, it is going to create a kind of problem for again.
ناصر جان گفته شما با استفاده از وقت از این برادر مشکل اساسی پرزنتیشن هایی است که مربوط به هر استاد میشه. انشالله این مورد از صحبت کردیم. من پیامم ماندم امروز جای به جای انشالله که اپلود میکنن.
تشکر ندرد صاحب، تشکر برادر، تشکر.
خواهش میکنم.
Can you see the slide?
We can see the screen actually through the mobile phone, but not the slide now.
yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
now we can see.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. So we were talking about how to identify and formulate our research problem and what are major sources. Okay. So first is a major source to identify a problem only with the guidance or the consultation and discussion. with research professionals like our colleagues, like our research fellows who are have some sort of experience in that particular research area. Then the other is brainstorming session in the organization. When you talk about government organizations or these international organizations like CARE, UNICEF, UNHCR, in those organizations, basically your administrative head guides you what are key variables which are supposed to be covered in this particular research. So sometimes this also can be done with help of your administrative head, because that is the part of organizational setup of this development sector. And of course, in case of this particular research class, the major source to identify this research problem is basically review of literature. And to guide you, I would like to add one thing on the basis of my own experience and observation. Whenever you are going to cover some anything in your research formulation, you have to divide your literature into two parts. First is classical studies. Classical studies means those studies which are actually that are proved milestones, major magnum opus of that particular area. Like in case of Afghanistan, we are not just supposed to focus on education studies that have been conducted only within 5 years. Rather, we can go back, we can learn from those classic studies that have been conducted in 70s and 80s. And definitely there must be some sort of study, some sort of research that is available. So it can be done by international organization, it can be done by some other local historian or local research institute. But you have to incorporate, first of all, those classic studies. Try to search first of all those classic studies. Then of course you have to incorporate update dimension of that on that area as well. So there has to be a combination, a balanced combination between classic studies and update studies, so that you can understand what concepts and what terminologies have been rejected through this process. For example, let's take one term only, that is underdevelopment. Underdevelopment can be defined and accepted in classical studies. But nowadays, this term is completely banned in the sense it is not okay to use this kind of terminology. Why? Because it is considered inappropriate in the sense that it can create hierarchies between the researcher and the study object. So, the whole purpose behind this research method, behind this scientific research in rural areas, we are supposed to diminish, we are supposed to challenge, we are supposed to break all kind of hierarchies. That is why development and underdevelopment are considered as loaded terms. Those terms are now completely excluded. So, developing is a kind of process which is a continuous process, and that is somehow more what you can call neutral in the sense that it is not going to create hierarchy that this village is developed and this village is not developed, or rural communities of that particular countries are developed and rural communities of that particular country are underdeveloped. So this is a kind of understanding that can be attained only by review of literature. And that is why, let me tell you again, the second point, it can be done with consultation of your with your expert professionals and research colleagues. It can be done by brainstorming sessions, but one thing which is never going to be missed in this process is the third source, which is basically more important, and that is review of the whole body of literature. As much as possible, there has to be a fine balance between classical studies of that particular area, so that you can draw a framework which is basically international, that is global, and then it has to be country specific. That means in case of India or in case of Afghanistan, it can be again the national level, and then only third level is going to be the local level. For example, a particular rural community located in a very in a particular district or in a particular province of India or Afghanistan. So there are this kind of trickle down development of understanding in your dependent and interdependent variables. So uh, because of this research process, because of these steps, actually we can confirm the authenticity and validity of the facts. That means, is this understanding has not to be biased. Rather, whenever we are formulating certain hypothesis, it has to be based on some authentic source, and facts have to be viewed in the light of a particular perspective. This is all about the identification and formulation of research problem. Let's go to the second problem, which is much more difficult than the earlier one. Actually, this is the statement of the problem. Statement of the problem means you are supposed to define what indicators you are going to focus in your study. Uh, this actually is complicated in the sense that you cannot be very general, number one. You cannot be very broad. Number three, you cannot be very vague. So, for the clear understanding, it has to be related to some dimension, to your some already known factual information, because your study has to be part of a theory rather than a completely imaginary thing. Whenever we talk about hypothesis, we say it tentative, we never use term imaginary, because it is always factual, it is always verified by other studies. That is why the definition of a problem, I mean the defining of your research problem, is very crucial, because it has to be coming in the light of some already known factual information on that particular in that particular area. Like in my case, for today's discussion, we are talking about health and education, the interrelation between health status and education status of rural women. So we have to locate at this relationship by the through the perspective, excuse me, through some perspective which can already has uh, has verified certain findings on the basis of their systematic study. Only then we can understand that how can we define this a particular problem. That is why this statement of a problem can define what are key indicators we are going to cover. That means what are prime indicators through which we can deduce or induct our hypothesis. So, statement of problem, that is the research problem, uh, is required to be operationalized. Operationalized in the sense variables are variables, those are concepts, until we start our study, until we start uh, adding our valid knowledge with that of the logical valid knowledge with that of the empirical verification. So, first step to understand how to operationalize your variables during formulation of hypothesis is that it has neither too general nor too specific. That means a specificity of variables is basically practical. Practical in the sense, when I am talking about health, of course, health has different dimensions and it is very wide concept. Health can be related to your uh, uh, other problems like skin, like health, like your internal organs. But let's try to specify something like when we start thinking about relation between interrelation between health and education of rural women, we have to specify what do we mean to say health. That means we have to specify one particular area of that health, women, rural women's health. So, for example, we can take reproductive health of rural women because we have to specify the variables so that we can operationalize. Otherwise, health of rural women is so wide that almost everything, not a single lady is going to be completely free from that kind of particular health problem. So what are we going to focus in our study? So that is a kind of practical problem which can be solved by operational terms. So uh, what we mean to say operational terms means to make something researchable. If it is too wide, too general, it is not researchable. You can't conduct a complete study about it. So for instance, we are specifying this health of rural women as reproductive health of rural women. That means we have to focus only on those problems that are going to face by a particular uh, age bracket or among rural ladies, and those health problems are again specified in that reproductive health area. So there can be a kind of what, how, and why of a particular variable only when we try to operationalize that particular term. Second, let's talk about another topic, for instance, for your better information, because most of the time it's not easy to understand gender related problem. Let's talk about education, the interrelationship between technological advancement and agriculture. Okay, so again, agriculture is a very wide term. What kind of agriculture? For instance, agriculture related to those cash crops. So it has to be specified. That means operationalization of variables is basically making a researcher to understand that is your research problem is suitable for a scientific research or not. So that is why this evaluation of problem is supposed to be done by these four criteria that is written here. That is the problem researchable? Second, is that problem new? Third, is that problem significant enough? Because unless and until something is very superficial or very temporary, again it is a wastage of time to conduct a full-fledged study in that. So you have to understand one thing, that that research problem has to be also very important in the sense that it has to be significant to um some sort of relevance to that particular area of your study. And that is why, because of all these, we can relate that this research problem is actually feasible or not, valid or not. So, all these are basically our attempts to understand that how we can uh, solve the error part, or the bias part of our hypothesis. Now, let's talk about feasibility in terms of practical problems. These are very important issues. That is why we are taking time to understand it. For example, research competencies. As I was referring my experience with your senior group, I have told you that most of the time students try to formulate their hypothesis with this, with a very wide framework, like they are going to conduct the outcome study of a particular development program, as well as the second objective is written there, suggestions for improvement. This is basically not in favor of your research competencies. Why? Because those programs are basically based on a very systematic development of themes and sub themes, and over a very long period of time these programs have been planned like that. And we also must understand one thing, that it is very important to understand that you can't implement a program, a program completely, which is going to be actually completely profitable in 100% terms for that particular beneficiary purpose, because there are many factors. So you have to understand research competency, that these programs are so well composed, well planned, and then well executed, that of course there can be certain dimensions that you can highlight, but you can't do this in your dissertation, that you are going to cover all those outcomes of that particular one development program, and at the same time in the same study you are going to suggest improvements or suggestions. No, your research competency has nothing to do with that particular kind of suggestion. So we have to understand professional constraint. Otherwise, that hypothesis would more like a kind of idealistic hypothesis, which and idealism has nothing to do with scientific study. Okay. Then second is interest and enthusiasm. Of course, because I have interest in gender part of development process. That means again and again I am going to look at those gender issues. Like I had started this whole session by covering one particular relationship between reproductive health of rural women and their educational status. But maybe your interest is in some other sort of thing. That means a researcher has to be particular about one particular interest, or and that is why, if that area is has if that particular researcher is interested in one particular area, then of course he must be feeling enthusiastic. But sometimes, because of your administrative constraint, you are supposed to take it and another objective which is not a very great interest for you, and then your enthusiasm is again going to down. So again this is going to again to undermine the feasibility of your hypothesis. Financial consideration and feasibility, that is a very common issue, we all are aware about it, that without any particular funding, big level of organized funding, we can't conduct a very large study. That means we are supposed to conduct a small level study for this dissertation, because there is a time constraint which is written also there, and there is also financial constraint. And that is why uh, actually the whole process behind this formulation of hypothesis is the idea to minimize constraint, that and that can be done only by formulating your particular facts and your theories, and only then you can predict some sort of unknown data in the light of some theory. It cannot be something very imaginary. That is that feasibility issue has to be addressed in this first step of hypothesis. Now let's talk about a good hypothesis. What are salient features of a good hypothesis? First of all, again, that we have already discussed. It has to be consistent with known facts and theories. It cannot be completely imaginary, because then it is neither going to be productive nor going to be feasible. Because it will be a kind of idealistic kind of study. It will be completely imaginary. But in research, actually, we try to conduct scientific study. Okay. Second is you are able to explain data in clear cut terms. That means in your hypothesis, you have to be simplify your objective. That means any commoner can understand by reading your hypothesis what are you going to focus in your study. For example, I have taken an example like the interrelationship between um, reproductive health of rural women and their educational status. But I just want to highlight one thing here. um, it can be completely ignored, but let's now, because now is the time to understand. I have not told you it in a form of statement. I am talking about the interrelationship between reproductive health of rural women and educational status, but I have not defined it in a sentence, in a framework, and that is I am doing it on purpose. Why? In coming slide we are going to know about it. Right now just try to understand that I have just defined two important indicator. One is educational status of rural women, and the other is their reproductive health. So here this is the simplicity of this particular term. Then we can identify what particular area of a lady's health can be covered in this study. Then it has to be stated in the simplest possible form, which I am not doing in on purpose in this slide. Why? Because there can be multiple ways to state, to display, to formulate that research problem in the form of a statement. It can be done by help of a question. Number two, it can be done by help of a description of a statement. Number three, it can be also displayed or explored by help of a rejection or accepting one formulation in a very clear cut term. So there can be multiple ways. But what I am trying to make you understand here, that you have to you have to be very clear cut about those particular variables which are going to be part of your hypothesis. So a good hypothesis has to be very clear cut, and it can neither be very broad, neither it can be ambiguous. But the biggest part, the most significant part of hypothesis, it is tentative. That means it can be probably true, it can be true, and it can be false. You can't decide it since the beginning. So what are actually conducive conditions for formulating and testing a hypothesis? How can we understand that this hypothesis is a good hypothesis or not, and what are key steps to for this testing for the testing of hypothesis in our research study. So basically, let's try to categorize these in two parts. First is induction, and the second is deduction. To make it simple for all of you, uh, this is induction. Induction is basically deriving something from particular to general, while deduction is from general to particular. So, first of all, it is very clear by now, I am very sure about it, that you all must be aware that your hypothesis is basically partly based on facts and some narratives that are based in theory or some basic perspectives, and partly conceptual. So it has to be a kind of combination between theory and practice. Again, that we had discussed in our first slide, logical validity and empirical verification. So, in research, we always try to work on the nexus between theory and practice, that is, the actual reality in the field study. So, deduction of a hypothesis can be done by induction. Induction means from particular to general. That means we can formulate a hypothesis on the basis of induction by uh, observation of some sort of special behavior, or a trend, or a probable relationship between variables. Second is the deriving a hypothesis deductively. This is just opposite to the way we try to follow induction process. In deduction, we try to do that from general to particular. So, in we also can derive a hypothesis by help of a theory or the whole perspective. For example, this technological advancement and the relation between technological advancement and outcome on the agriculture and the agricultural income, are they improving or they are decreasing? This kind of relationship can be understood by some sort of a theory, and that is actually based in modernization theories. Modernization theories are saying that technological advancement can lead to higher income in agriculture. So here we are actually trying to theorize our hypothesis deductively, and in a just opposite way, if we try to understand that why some province in a particular province of Afghanistan or India, we can see that farmers are earning uh, very good earnings from their agriculture, while in the other provinces the same situation is not happening. So what is the reason? And then we are going to actually focus on that particular province, and this is the way when we try to when we try to derive our hypothesis inductively. So this is the difference between inductive process and deductive process. Then also, limiting the research problem is very important. That is why I have started with the relationship between health outcomes and education status of rural women. But later on, when we started developing understanding in this research process, I try to specify that health problem as reproductive health of rural women. Okay, so this is actually a researcher's ability to understand what evidences are available. Number one, to support the relationship that we are actually anticipated in our hypothesis, or against that anticipated relationship. It can be uh, right, it can be wrong, it can be true, it can be false, but one has to be very clear cut about comprehending this available evidence. Without this, logical validity will be missing. That means You are going to conduct an empirical study, but you will not have a valid statement. So what are you going to verify empirically in your study? That means, again, let me remind all of you. uh, are you hearing my voice? Can you please tell me?
Yes, yes, ma'am, you're loud and
Okay,
clear.
Yes.
okay. Thank you, thank you. So if there is any sort of question, you can ask me. Please don't wait for the whole discussion to end. Okay, any one of you can ask me any question anytime. Okay. And the last thing, these hypotheses, these are also can be derived from conversations, from analogies. There can be anything that can uh, help you to identify a
Ma'am,
important,
sorry
a
for
relevant.
disturbing, ma'am. Sorry for disturbing. Your time is for break. We have 5 minute breaks. It will be
Okay,
great.
okay.
Sorry.
Let's take a break. Let's take a break of 10 minutes, and we will be resuming around 6:48. Okay? Please take a break. Feel free. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Can we resume?
Yes,
Yes, sir,
ma'am,
we are
but
ready.
according the time, it takes, we still have 1 minute because
Okay,
it was
so
till 4:18. Maybe the other participants are still not in that.
yes, yes, yes. We'll be resuming within 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sir, I have a small question related to lecture today. Sir, today
Please.
lecture you would like to explain as is this lecture available in the in our chapters?
Uh, can have you received my first PowerPoint presentation? Because I have shared my PowerPoint presentation with your IGNOU Dehradun Center. Have you received that?
Yes, we have gone 16 chapters.
No, 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 no. I am asking you. You have to go through two types of two types of resource. First is that is available in the form of text on e-Gyan Kosh. Okay,
Yes,
we have covered first and second unit of block 1 of research methods in rural development in my
o-
previous presentation that we did on 8th of January.
okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Simultaneously, I'm also sharing my PowerPoint presentations with RC Dehradun so that you all can also get an access to that PowerPoint presentation. So I'm asking
Uh,
regarding that. Have you received that?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So all the time we are going to share all those PowerPoint presentations as well as the study material is available in your eGyan Kosh. So have you gone through that?
Okay, sir. At the end of the class, please share your slide with as it's easy and we can learn best.
That is okay, but still for the accomplishment of the all the assignments that you guys are going to be receive in future, you are supposed to go through text, but because these issues are very long and complicated ones that you can't depend only on PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so this is a
Okay.
kind reminder, gentle reminder to all of you to please go through those texts as well. Anyone else want to ask something or to add something? Because I'm sure most of your learners from your class are development professionals. So you are not the beginner as well. So there are, if there is any particular reflection or observation or any question, please feel free to ask about it.
Yeah. Sorry, ma'am. One question, just what will be the difference between theories and hypothesis? I don't know exactly the difference
Okay, great,
between these
great.
two
Thank
things.
you. Thanks a lot for this very important, very significant question. Is there anything else? Okay, let's talk about the difference between theory and hypothesis. The basic difference between theory and hypothesis is that theory is only uh, after those systematic studies that are part of a very long process of research in that body of knowledge. So theory is always based on millions of theories, millions of studies that is covering the factual information as well as empirical verification, but hypothesis is only a tentative statement or the tentative relationship between two or three possible variables. You cannot be sure that this relationship between actual health status and educational status of rural women is going to be directly related. It can be directly related or it cannot be directly related. So this is tentative, that means it is hypothesis, but once hypotheses are proved, once all dimensions are covered, only then it becomes like a theory. The theory is always proved. That is why we derive facts and verified generalizations, but hypothesis is a tentative statement about the possibility of the relationship between some variables, and it can be true and it can be false. So, my answer helpful to you, Sayed Nasir?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. So now let's talk about the forms of hypothesis. And that is why, for this particular purpose, I was just trying to make you understand that my hypothesis related to reproductive health of rural women and their educational status, I was not framing that in a particular statement or the sentence. Why? Because I was willing to make you understand the difference between forms of hypothesis. These are key forms of hypothesis. One is declarative. As the name suggests, it is all about the declaration or the simple statement of your hypothesis. That means uh, the better educational status will improve the reproductive health status of rural women in comparison to those ladies, those rural women who don't have better educational status. This is a kind of declarative hypothesis. Here we are following a different example that is available in your e-Gyan course. It is talking about the relationship between awareness program with help of video, audio visuals. Uh, Health programs with the audio visuals will improve the health status of pregnant women in comparison to those who don't have such provisions. That means they are saying that uh, audio visual programs will improve the awareness of health status, and that would affect their outcome in the health status as compared to those rural women, those pregnant women who don't have any access to those audio visual programs related to health awareness. This is a kind of simple statement and we call it declarative hypothesis. You can write it down also in your research area, and we can discuss it during our class, that how the same relationship can be framed in three types of hypothesis. One is declarative. Second is hypothesis in question form. Let's take one by one. So, declaration is a simple statement that it is going to improve and it is not going to improve. This is a kind of declarative hypothesis. Then, the same relationship of variable can be composed in a question form. Then we call it hypothesis in question form. That means we are not going to the possibility of relationship of those variables in a clear cut statement. Rather, we are going to ask a question whether uh, rural women with higher educational status are uh, better in their health status. So we are framing this statement in the form of a question. Similarly, in the case of the same example, that means audiovisual health program, health awareness program, and its impact on pregnant women can be framed in the form of a question, and then it is like, will instructions through video programs affect the health status of pregnant women? So there is no basic difference between the relationship of those particular variables, but it is different the way we approach it. One is the declaration of a statement, and the other is a question form. Then the third one is going to be very important, and that is null hypothesis. Null hypothesis, because it is always going to be statistically tested, that is why it is also known as statistical hypothesis. In case of null hypothesis, we try to understand the significance of a particular variable by testing it statistically. And in case of declarative and hypothesis in question form, we can see that there is a set direction. That means we have discussed both of those examples in case of declarative hypothesis and hypothesis in question form, and we can observe it very clearly that both of these forms of hypothesis are actually directing us that there is a direct relationship between health state between reproductive health of pregnant women and their awareness. Or in my examples case, in my research areas case, there has to be a direct relationship between reproductive health of and reproductive health of rural women and their higher education status. If there is the higher education status, there has to be the better outcomes in reproductive health outcomes of those rural women. But in case of null hypothesis, it is not suggesting you any particular direction. That is why we can write it like, there will be no difference in health status of two groups of pregnant women, one following instructions through video programs and the other having no such facility. So here, if you can see this clearly, that there is not a particular direction is set in this null hypothesis. They are saying there will be no difference in health status of two groups of pregnant women. Either they are exposed to audiovisual health awareness programs or they are not. That means in that case, neither they are going to support it nor they are going to reject it. They are telling you clearly that there is not a particular difference between both of these groups. But yes, by conducting that research, of course you are going to understand that yes, there is some sort of there is some sort of relationship between that audiovisual health awareness program and the outcome of the pregnant women. It is a possibility. I'm again because null hypothesis, it can be rejected and it can be accepted. Number one. Number two, it can be proved significant and it can be proved insignificant. So these are basically main or the key forms of hypothesis that we try to cover in our research studies whenever we are conducting either in either in case of general research study or in case of particularly rural development. Now, testing hypothesis is another very crucial issue, because in case of null hypothesis, you actually formulate two hypotheses. First is statement of the research hypothesis, and the second one is the null hypothesis. You can take all those as one basic hypothesis and the alternative of that particular research hypothesis. So this is a kind of case where we are supposed to statistically uh, testify whether the hypothesis is relevant or not, whether we are accepting it or rejecting it. And in case of null hypothesis, most of the time we choose a statistical test and then we try to measure significance level. Sometimes significance is not very higher, is not very high. Even then, we are not supposed to reject that particular null hypothesis. Despite of that low significance level, researcher can continue with the null hypothesis. So if you are going to go, if you are going through the text, you will be in a better way, you will be able to understand that there are four possibilities during that testing of that hypothesis. First, in case of significance, in case of good significance, they can accept null hypothesis. Number two, they can reject hypothesis despite of high level of significance. At the same time, with low level of significance, they can accept or they can reject. So there are basically four types of possibilities, but every time researcher has to write it down clearly as what is the logic behind this accepting decision or the rejecting decision. And again, you have to specify why is this low significance is very relevant or why the very high significance is irrelevant. So you can compute this statistical test, and accordingly we reject or we accept. And then, as if we are going to reject that particular null hypothesis, then we are going to accept its alternative hypothesis, that is H1. That is the number one, that is the statement of the research hypothesis, which was actually just opposite to the null hypothesis. And in case we are going to accept that null hypothesis, that means we are going to reject H1. So this is basically specifically statistically done, while in the form of for the beginner, let me again guide you, because on the basis of on behalf of my experience with research students, let's not try to start with that particular very complicated kind of a statistical tool. Rather, it is a very good practice if you go through the hypothesis that was in the question form, because in that case, again, it is equal possible, there is an equal possibility of whether getting that answer in assertive terms or in negative terms. Like, will instructions through video programs affect the health status of pregnant women? In the findings, you can find out that no, instructions through video programs doesn't affect the health status of pregnant women in considerable terms as compared to those women who don't have access to those audio visual health awareness programs. Simultaneously, you can also get that in the assertive terms, like yes, instructions through video programs affect the health status of pregnant women as compared to those who don't have access to those audio visual health awareness programs. So, for the beginner, I like to suggest the third kind of hypothesis, that is hypothesis in question form. But still, if you are okay with it, then definitely you can also go to the go through your go to conduct your research study by this null hypothesis and that this declarative kind of hypothesis. So it's not a big deal. Now, because this portion was covering lots of crucial issues which are actually part of your assignment. In coming time, you are going to receive assignments, and that unit 3 of your block 1 first block is very crucial. So we have taken a larger portion of time for that. Now we are going to talk about how to prepare a research proposal. And definitely the steps that we were talking about in the first part of our interaction, now we are going to operationalize that understanding in the framework of a particular research proposal. So let's talk about it. First of all, the first thing, the second thing that we are supposed to be very clear cut in our study is basically the research design. Hypothesis is formulated, variables are defined, and now we have to understand what kind of research design we are going to follow for conducting our particular research. Now, the basic difference between hypothesis and research design is that the hypothesis is the inceptive statement or the first step of your research process, but actually research design is going to cover all those steps of your research, right from the formulation of the hypothesis to that of the presentation of those findings, outcomes and generalizations on the basis of a conducted study. So, research design is basically the overarching framework. The overarching means major conceptual framework within which all those research steps are going to be incorporated. So, this is a kind of blueprint for the completion of the whole research process. That means all those six steps are going to be incorporated in research design in a very systematic and organized way. Again, accepting one thing very exclusively, that all these steps are, we are showing it in five steps or six steps, from the formulation of the hypothesis to that of the generalizations. But actually all these steps are, number one, interdependent, and number two, not free from self correction. So this has to be always in your mind whenever you are, either you are writing an assignment in research methods, or you are conducting dissertation study for the completion of your dissertation. So overall research design is not just one step or the second step, it is covering all those steps. So it is a kind of blueprint of the whole research project in a systematic way, with exactly counting possible terms of spending, in terms of time, in terms of funding required, in terms of administrative requirements. And of course one thing is missing from here, because I am following here guidelines from your e-gyan coach. One thing is very important: either you are conducting a study for developments for government based sector, or it is a part of your civil society organization framework, like international and national civil society organizations, or you call them NGOs. In that case, there is always a very specific type of report format. So, for the first thing which you are supposed to incorporate in your study is actually what is the format of report writing, which your client, whether government or non-government, which your client is going to prefer. So it has to be very clear cut since the beginning, what things they are require, what things they may require in the presentation of that particular report. Because the problem is that when you are when you are back from that particular study, from that particular area, it is not possible to go back there and to conduct the whole study. So that is why not only the objective, and this is the missing part from here. So you have to be very clear cut about the writing format of your report after completion of that particular research study. And here, for your guidance purpose, in IGNU eGyan Kosh, there is also one whole document is available on the dissertation, and they have written everything, including the format which you are supposed to follow. So kindly go through that, and if you are not getting that access, so let me please feel free, let me know about that. But first try to search it on your own, and in case you are not getting that, let me know about that in our next session, which is again going to be conducted on next Monday evening, so that we can share that the whole document. Because research design is okay, but is still report design, the way you are going to present that report is has to be very clear cut since the beginning. So depending on the purpose of the research, research design can be uh, various types, can be categorized in various types. First is exploratory research design. In exploratory research design, the term is very clear cut in the sense that they are actually going to talk about the whole new dimension or partial dimension of a particular research area. So it is a kind of new research area, or an area which has not been covered completely it or partially. It has been covered, but it is covered only partially. So in that case, in that kind of research area, we follow exploratory research design. Then second is descriptive research design. In descriptive research design, the prime purpose of research is description of a particular research problem. That means we are going to cover all parts. We are going to cover all parts, all dimensions as much as possible. We are not going to limit the number of dimensions. Actually, this is just opposite to the process that we do, that we follow in the exploratory research design. Basically, in exploratory research design, we try to focus on a particular, on one specific dimension only. We don't cover all those major areas. But in descriptive research design, we try to cover uh, all the dimensions as much as possible, as widely as possible, so that we can understand all that phenomenon in all that in a holistic or thorough framework. So this is the basic difference between exploratory research design and descriptive research design. Third is diagnostic research design. In diagnostic research design, prime purpose of the research is diagnosis. Diagnosis means you are conducting a particular research problem in order to solve one problem. That means you are going to understand what are the impediments they are facing and how to work on that impediments, so that the flow or the supply of development benefits can be resumed, which was hampering because of some sort of impediment. So this is a kind of diagnosis. Like you go, you feel some sort of sickness. For instance, you are feeling headache, and you are feeling continuously you are feeling headache. So you go to your doctor, and your doctor suggests to you to go through a diagnostic center where they ask you to go for MRI and all that. Okay, so this diagnostic research design is a kind of MRI of that particular research problem, as what are key impediments or what are the barriers that are affecting supply of flow of development benefits in a particular uh, area, and how can we solve that problem so that the stuck supply can be resumed. So this is the purpose of this diagnostic research design, and accordingly we follow not neither exploratory research design nor descriptive research design. For this purpose we follow that diagnostic research design. And the fourth one is the experimental research design, which is not very widely used in research studies of rural development. Why? Because experimentation is okay, but because there are multiple factors are responsible in development process, and technically you can't control one indicator in a very decisive way. This is not possible, but somehow we can conduct this kind of experimentation, like what we were talking about when we were talking about forms of hypothesis. Let's go back to that particular slide so that you can understand. In our hypothesis in question form, we have written, will instructions through video programs affect the health status of pregnant women? That means, for our understanding to experimental research design, what can we do? We can create two groups of pregnant women in one village, and one group is exposed to audiovisual health awareness programs, while the other group is completely exclusively is kept away from that particular exposure to audiovisual program. But the problem with this kind of thing is that all those ladies are living in one village, and they must be familiar and they must be interacting. And in this particular process, you can't shun off, you can't completely cut off the interaction between them. So, my question is, can we regulate, can we control this overall interaction? Of course, we are not showing them these audiovisual health awareness programs to one group of ladies, but can we control this experimentation completely and this interaction? And in their interaction, these ladies of two different groups are not going to talk about their exposure. So this is a kind of a very difficult situation. That is why, although we discuss experimental research design, but in research development, particularly research methods in rural development, this experimental research design is of limited use. Okay, for example, it can be used for certain things like online teaching and offline teaching, but awareness programs or exposure to some controlled indicator, or what you say, some controlled variable, is completely not possible. So that is why exploratory, descriptive, and diagnostic research design needs no requirement of very special expertise and a great team, or you can call it a very organized team. But yes, in experimental research design, you always require very experienced and very organized team of researchers. So this is the basic difference between these research designs. But moreover, it is a very flexible in the sense that the whole purpose is to guide you from formulating the research problem, till the trend analysis of finding out that outcome of the study, and to present them in the form of generalization. So this is a very flexible kind of process, but it has its own purpose. I mean, every type of research design has its own pros and cons that we were trying to discuss. Then in the end, the very important thing is, how are we going to describe our variables, because it is in your control which variable you are counting as independent and which variable you are going to count as dependent, and as well as intervening variables are very important. In my case, I have told you that there must be so many intervening variables between educational status of rural women and their health outcomes. For example, when we were talking about access, we were trying to understand social access and uh, physical access. Physical access means the actual distance, geography, transportation choices available to those rural women. But when you talk about social access means sometimes a lady has no freedom to go out of village on its own. That means she is dependent on others. Like sometimes her male counterpart is accompanying her simultaneously. There are also possibilities if her male counterpart of the family are not available, then there must be some other ladies, some other female counterparts of the same family, or the kinship ties that we know very well are very crucial in Afghanistan's rural community. So there can be different types of social access that can alter our intervening variables. That is the whole idea behind choosing those variables, number one. And we are supposed to define those variables in those particular terms. For example, when we are talking about kinship ties, those are not those kinship ties as we are talking about rural communities in Indian villages. No. I was going through the whole literature, and I come to know that those kinship ties are much more stronger in Afghanistan rural communities. That means the idea of social access that we are experiencing in India is not necessarily has to be conducive to what we are going to experience as social access in Afghanistan. That means just independent and dependent variable are not enough to understand the whole relationship in that particular research area. Rather, role of intervening variables is very crucial, and most of the time this is the biggest error. Let me tell you, let me add this here, as most of the time the importance of intervening variables is undermined due to our ignorance. Okay, so the choice of basically independent variables depend upon more than one consideration. But most of the time we try to understand how many types of variables can be categorized, like socioeconomic, demographic, psychological, familial, organizational. There can be so many types of variables. So here we are ending our today's session, and let me ask you, all of you, for your reflections and questions. If there is any query, kindly uh, discuss. And can I request all of you to please switch on your cameras for 1 minute only, so that I can take a picture, because yes. Uh, we can have our interaction in Pashto or Dari, but and I am very sure that Navid will is going to help us. Please feel free. Now I am going to be a listener, and you are going to be the full in charge of this interaction. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
Just I requested for the from the colleagues that if you left the meeting, that we if we have a short discussion among ourselves in Pashto or Dari for our self understanding. Uh, if you are interested, yeah, you can
Much more. I am much
listen.
more interested in that,
Yeah.
because vibrancy of interaction is making us human society. Okay, unless and until we are going to discuss, we are going to negotiate our understanding, because knowledge is incomplete. I know
Okay.
something, you know something, let's try to share. Let's make it a joint venture. Please feel free.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks.
Ma'am, so before the interaction between the classmates, I have also one question that you also mentioned about the site, because we are just have access to LMS, the learning management system. But the one that you just talked it was some things in Indian. So actually I was not have an access on that. So could you please just tell me what kind of site it is actually, and how we can just have access on that?
First of all, let me tell you one thing that the whole background of this PowerPoint presentation, actually, we are following guidelines of IGNOU team, and they are suggesting us to incorporate those major parts. So that text is available. You are supposed to go to IGNOU eGyan Kosh, and there don't try to download all that study material together. Okay, go for it one by one. For example, there are 4 units in block 1 and we have covered so far. So try to download unit 1, unit 2 of block 1, and unit 3 and unit 4 of block 1, and then you will have the whole text on the basis of which we have presented this whole interaction. Okay, that we conducted on 8th of January and in today's session. So, and still if you are not getting that access, kindly let me know so that I can mail you. I am typing my mail here. There you can send me a request and I'll be sharing a direct link. This is PRAGYAN, that is my name, .105 at the rate uh, gmail.com. And Navid, you can do also one thing. You can create an email group for all of you, and you can add that and you can send it to me so that I can directly share these PowerPoint presentations. And of course, I would like to share some studies. Let me share links of uh, studies that I have found so far very important in case of Afghanistan. Uh, Although I am beginning with, no doubt, I am beginning with uh, international organizations like UNICEF, but we are not going to incorporate only these international studies. We are also going to incorporate certain studies that are done by other institutes as well. Okay, so in the text, I am sharing 2 links. You can follow that, and let's do some sort of discussion in Dari or Pashto, please. And because this is my request. Okay, Navid, please help your learner fellows so that we can discuss in that language as well. And I am listening. Thank you.
All right, ma'am. So first of all, so what we do first that classmates, we need to just have the all how to say email address of you because of the sharing all the resources which is shared by ma'am in others resource during the sessions that which will be conducting or already conducted. So I am also will share my WhatsApp number. You can just reach me through my WhatsApp number. You can just send me your email address. And after that, you together we will share and discuss the received resources, or you can say the lesson materials. Uh, and also, ma'am, I will send you an email and we will discuss about the new site. Actually, I cannot remember the name of the site. It was something that is difficult for me. So, by the way, hope
No worries. I just want to request to incorporate comments and reflections from your fellow participants. Those are very well versed in Pashto and Dari. Can you ask them if they have something to tell us?
خب دوستای بزرگوار قسمی که دوست ما ایبا جان بود فکر کنم اشاره کردن که میشه و ما و شما بحث به فارسی هم در 10 دقیقه یا خیر یا به زبان پشتو بر دو زبان داشته باشیم به هیچ کدام از اینا مشکلی نیست. هر کدام شما اگر میخواین که در رابطه به درس و چیزایی را که شما و خودتان یاد گرفتین چیزی اضافه کنین میشه که دستون بالا کنین و یک به یک میشه بحث بکنین. بسم الله.
سلامونه امید ده چې ټول به روغ جوړ استئ. Thank you sir. Thank you very much give opportunity for the personal speaking in the native language. عباد الله ورور او نوید ورور تاسو نه ډیره مننه thank you چې زمونږ دغه د ډسکشن لپاره چې د ټایم راکړو موږ ته. زمونږ به لومړی غوښتنه د استاد څخه همدا وي یا زمونږ کوم پرنسپل چې دی د هغه نه به زمونږ لومړی غوښتنه دا وي چې د سلایډونو باره کې لومړنۍ پوښتنه ده چې دا باید موږ سره شیر شي ځکه په چپټرو کې زیات داسې مسایل دي چې موږ نشو کیچ کولی او پیدا کول د ریلیټډ کوم موضوع چې نن موږ ته ډسکس کیږي او موږ ته وړاندې کیږي د استاد لخوا د هغې پیدا کول لږ ستونزمنه وي په چپټرو کې. سلایډ چون موږ دپاره اسان هم دی بل شارټ کټ سټډي ده کولی شو موږ په اسانۍ باندې پرې کې دی کیچینګ وکړو. نو دغه یو مهم موضوع ده دا باید موږ سره شیر کړو تر څو وکولی شو چې زموږ زیات ملګري داسې چې هغوی د چپټر نه چې دی عاجز نشي کولی د چپټر څخه مټیریل چې دی حاصل کړي او هغوی مطلب یو مایند ته واخلي یو کانسپټ ته واخلي نو لږ شاندې مشکلات پکې شته. نو موږ به دا موضوع د سره شیر کوو خیره چې د دپاره یو د حل لارو بشي.
حیات الله صاحب بسیار زیاد تشکر. من ببخشی که زبانی پشتوم گپ زدنم کمک ضعیف است اما میتونم را پس به فارسی برات بگم.
مشکل نیست فارسی میگی انگلیسی پشتو کدام زبان که شما میدونی.
تشکر. موضوع پرزنتیشن که شما گفتین بدون شک یک رای ساده تر هست، میتونه که همچون یک هنداوت باشد به خاطر استفاده روزمره او را میتونیم استفاده کنیم و استاد همیشه شریک کرده. فقط ما و شما از استاد قبلی را دریافت نکردیم. پرزنتیشنش که متاسفانه درسش بقدر به من جالب نبود. دیگر از استاد همیشه روان میکنه چون استاد ما در گروپ نیستن، در گروپ واتساپ نیستن. باید برود به تیم ایگنو، از تیم ایگنو باز دوباره به ما و شما میه و بعد از اون ما دریافت میکنیم میره که همیشه استاد روان کرده و این پرزنتیشن هم روان میکنه. اما به نظر من چون من قبلا هم در بخش و حساب بگیم تعلیمات تحصیلات کار میکردم، شما بهتر میفهمید که پرزنتیشن یک فقط عنوانا کوتاه نوشته میشود. درست است که ما را در بعضی موارد کمک میکنه اما ما باید دوباره بریم بر خود منبع به خود چپترها سر بزنیم و در اونجا بیشتر بخوانیم. اما چیزی را که بیشتر استاد اشاره کردن موضوع بسیار مهمی را که اینا باز هم یک سایت دیگه است، یک وبسایت شاید باشد که نامش گفت من نفهمیدم. وقتی که بخیر ما شماره ما براتون روان کردم در واتساپ میشه ایمیلاتون روان بکنین. ما یک دونه گروپ ایمیل روان میکنیم با استاد ما و شما رو به او وبسایت دسترسی میده. باز خوبیش در جو است که ما و شما فقط همون موضوع کوچک یک یونیت یا 2 یونیت موضوعی را که باید درس بخونیم انتخاب میکنیم، دانلود میکنیم، میخونیم و بعد از روی صحبت میکنیم. به نظر من این رو هم میتونه که ما و شما را کمک بکنه. و بعد از این هم من یک فکر دیگر داشتم که چه اسمی که شما پیشنهاد کردین که ما و شما باید در آخر یک بحث داشته باشیم. یک چیزی که بسیار دوست داره کمک میکنم موضوع دیگه است که ما در هر سیشن یک از دوستا را رضاکارانه داشته باشیم که موارد را یادداشت بکنه و بعد در آخر به زبان ملی ما و شما را صحبت بکنیم که مثل یک سمری واری یک خلاصه تا که دوستان خوبتر بفهمن که به طور مثال مثلا امروز چی بحث شد. ممکن ما همه و شما با زبان چون زبان مادری ما نیست مشکلات خودمون داریم، اصطلاحات متفاوت استفاده می شود. اگر شما موافق باشین چی نظر داره؟
ډیر ښه نظر تاسو ورکو په دې اړه باندې بالکل زه موافق یم په دې باندې. زمونږ زیات ملګري واقعیت د داسې دي چې هغوی کیچینګ نشي کولی په انګلیسي باندې ځکه زمونږ نیټیو لینګویج نه دی لکه ستونزه به یتمن. نو که چېرته مونږ وکولی شو خپله کې د کلاس په اینډ کې چې کوم ملګري زمونږ استاد مطلب لیکچر ورکړو د هغه په اینډ کې چې د مونږ خپلو کې سره په تیر لیکچر باندې سره وغږیږو یا دا چې که په همغه ورځ باندې ځینې ملګري ستړي وي نه غواړي چې ګډون پکې وکړي نو د هغه په سبا له یعنې مطلب یو ورځ وروسته به مونږ داسې یو پروګرام سیټ کوو چې په همغه کلاس باندې سره خبرې وکړو په هغه لیکچر باندې سره خبرې وکړو او مونږ ته دا موضوع بالکل ډیفاین شي بیخي اسانه شي مونږ لپاره هغه ملګري چې هغوی ورته رسۍ نه لري په د لیکچر په دوران کې مطلب د استاد د ایکسپلینیشن په وخت کې دوی سب پوه شوي دي سم کیچنګ یې نه دی کړی کانسیپټ یې کلیر نه دی نو دوی دپاره به ډېر اسانه موږ دپاره هم ډېر اسانه د هغوی نه یو څه کانسیپټ واخلو موږ یو څه زده کړو نور ملګري هغوی څه ایډیا لري کوم کیچنګ یې کړی د استاد نه داسې یو مهم نکات چې زمونږ ورته فکر نه وي هغوی ورته فکر شوی وي نو دا ډېره مهمه خبره ده ټول ملګري به له خیر اشتراک وکړو پکې یا د کلاس په اینډ کې یا دا چې د کلاس په اینډ کې مطلب ځینې ملګري ستړي وي نشي کولی ګډون وکړي نشي کولی مطلب کلاس اټینډ کړي په سبا باندې به موږ یو کلاس ارنج کوو
فکری بسیار خوب. پیش از اینکه دوستان یک آنچه که اضافه کنن ما به این نظر هستم که بدون شک بدون این موارد هم ما باید مشمول یک گروه دیگر جداگانه داشته باشیم کسانی که البته فعال هستند یک تعداد زیادی دوستان در گروه واتساپ ماردول هستند اما اونا جای نمیشن یا نمیخوانند یا متاسفانه بعد میرن روی یگان موارد دیگر بحث میکنن باز اگر دوستان موافق باشن تو میکنیم که ما شما هر سه شنبه باز یک روز دیگر که تایم با همه موافق بود این شکل میشه که با می گوگل میت لینک شیر بکنیم گفته شما برای 1 ساعت یا نیم ساعت اما داشته های خودمانه دو بگیریم. باز یک سه متوجه باشیم که حالا اول بساق قضیه است در ادامه ما شما مثلا در قسمت دایزرتیشن یا بگیم که اما چیمون که است در اونجا ما شما بسیار مشکلات می داشته باشیم بدون شک ما شما نیاز به یک گروپی داریم که همیشه صحبت بکنیم ما تجارب خودمان شریک بکنیم مشکلات شریک بکنیم با هم دیگر همکاری بکنیم ان شاءالله که باز بتونیم موفقانه این برنامه را تمام بکنیم. بهترین راهش است گروه واتساپ شریک شوه کوشش میکنیم یک گروه واتساپ در داخل خودمون داشته باشیم تنها کسانی که فعال هستن ممکن یک تعدادی به طور سال نیستن از اون ما شما پیش میریم باز اینا نظریات دوستان را میگیریم باز از روی ثمری میکنیم.
بالکل تاسو عباد الله ورور سره مخکې شریکه کړې وه هغه ته مې ویلو حمید ورورو ځینې نور ملګري چې هغوی موږ سره په تیر میټینګ کې جوین شوي وو هغوی خبرې کړې وې ټولو سره هم دا خبرې شیر کړې وه چې موږ باید داسې یو کلاس داسې یو میټینګ باید موږ سره ولرو خپلو کې هغوی هم اګریمنټ کړی دی موافقه کړې ده نو چون زمونږ مشکلات په افغانستان کې ډېر دي هر څه ته لاسرسی کول ستونزمنه ده خو موږ به داسې دی چې زمونږ مهم کلاسونه دي مهم وخت دی او ټول به له خیره داسې یو ګروپ کریټ کوو ټول به ورکې ګډون کوو.
مننه وروره.
زما آواز راځي؟
والی صاحب بسیار ما ببخشین عباد الله جان صحبت بکنن باز به شما نوبت بدیم ببخشین.
تشکر بسیار زیاد. مننه ملګرو. زما هدف صرف دا خبره ده چې موږ جدا د نه بل ګروپ ولرو او هغې کې په ډیټیل سره ډسکشن وکړو په نور موضوعاتو او په درسونو خو دلته زما هدف دا وکړه چې دا درس د هر ورځ خلاصیږي 2 ساعته د دې په اخره کې دغه 10 منټه چې ما داسې ویلې لکه کوم ورور چې ډېر پوه شوی وي په لیکچر باندې هغه کولی شي ولنټیر ګوته جګه کړي چې زه د نن ورځ د درس نه ما دغه شیان زده کړی یا از درس امروزی ما فرضاً هایپوتزیس یا تیوریاس اینی چیزا ما یاد کردم نظر ما ای بود اندرستندینگ ما امی بود دیگه بیادر شاید باشه او بگوید تجربه خود بگوید که ما اینی درس یاد گرفتم اخذ ما اینی است نظر دیگه بیادر چه قسم هستن فرضاً یک نفر شاید باشه که بیخی 10% اخذ کرده باشه یک نفر باشه شاید 90% اخذ کرده باشه یک نفر باشه 50% اخذ کرده باشه ولنتیرلی امو دوستایی که زیاد تجربه داره و اخذ از لکچر زیاد گرفته باشه او میشه که درس به شکل خلص تشریح کنم اگر ما زیاد منتظر باشیم به روز دیگه بعدی این درس زیاد ما میره یعنی تازه و تازه خوب هستن که ما بگیم که این لکچر استاد خلاص شد بخیر امروزی ما خلاص میگم دیگه زیاد وقت از این خاطر که 2 ساعت اونجا لکچر میگیریم پس از او اگر نیم ساعت بمانیم باز بورینگ میشه خسته کن میشه برای ما شما فقط امیر یاد بگیریم لن خلاص یعنی لند یاد کو چې ما کوم موضوعات باندې خبرې شي هغه په خلص ټکو کې هر نفر په 1 دقیقه یا 2 دقیقو کې د خپل نظر وړاندې کړي. زیات وخت ځکه چې نفرم ډیر یو ک ډیر نفر نظر وړاندې کړي بیا دا ډیر وګديږي. 1 یا 2 دقیقو کې خپل هغه انډرستانډینګ خپل هغه اخس چې د درس نه کړی وي هغه وړاندې کړي. دا به د دې درس هر
درست است درست است با جان. موضوع خود تا گرفتیم، نظریات دیگه دوستا را میگیریم، باز از روی از او تصمیم میگیریم. محمد ولی جان بفرمایید.
سلام به همه. نوی جانم اخسر بخته چې تاسو دغه دی مم بار یادوري وکړه. ایګي انکوش په نوم سایت دی، مخکې مونږ سره شیر شوی او البته د هغې هغه اساسات چې ټول ما ډاونلوډ کړي وو. مونږ یو بیل ګروپ هم شته چې د خپله د زمونږ افغانانو کوم ملګری کوم جوړ کړی، زه نه پوهېږم چې اډمین یې څوک دی، خو د مارډول له خاطره د افغانانو یو ګروپ هم شته د وټساپ. ما هغې کې هم شیر کړی او زمونږ چې ګروپ د مارډول چې د خپله دوی لخوا جوړ شوی دی د ایګنو لخوا، هغې کې مې هم شیر کړي وو. نو ایګنو کې کوم د ایګي کوش کې چې کوم څه اسنادول په حساب زموږ د مټیریالز سټډي مټیریالز هغه ما ټول ډاونلوډ کړي او ته مې شیر کړي وو. لومړی مې دا غوښتل چې څومره 2-3 دفعې یادوري وکړه چې زه په دې سایټ باندې پوه نه شم، نو هغه ایګي انکوش دی. او دویمه خبره د حیات ورور او د بدله ورور په خبرو په ادامه چې دوی خبرې وکړې، ښه خبره ده چې موږ دغه ولرو. خو زما په نظر بهتره به دی چې که هر ملګری په کوم ځای نه وي پوه شوی هغه سوال دې وکړي او څوک چې پرې پوه شوي هغه دې جواب کړي، نو دا به بهتره وي. ځکه که چېرې داسې مکمل لګیا شو یو څه زه به هم پوه شوی یم ته به هم پوه شوی بل به هم پوه شوی او لګیا شو، هغه بیا ډېر داسې جالبه نه وي. که زه په کوم څه نه یم پوه شوی ځان سره به یې زه یاداشت کړم، اخر کې به زه پوښتنه کوم چې دغه موضوع باندې زه پوه نه شم، نو که کوم ملګری ماته یو تشریح راکوی وشي لکه ایکسپلینیشن راته وکړي مکمل، زما خو نظر دا دی چې داسې به بهتره راشي. صرف زما همدا نظر و، نور وخت نه نیسم. السلام علیکم.
محمد رو ډېر زیاته مننه. دا خبره بالکل ټیک ده چې ځینې هغه ملګري چې مشکلات لري په خپل لیکچر کې نشي کولی چې مطلب د لیکچر په جریان کې پوه شوي نه دي، هغې د خپل مشکلات هغه خپله کوم پوښتنه چې ده ځان سره ولیکي. باقي کله چې زمونږ ترمنځ خبرې منځ ته راځي د کلاس په اینډ کې سره مونږ ډسکشن کوو، دی د خپل هغه لاس اوچت کي، مطلب دی د خپل هغه پوښتنه وکړي. باقي هر ملګری چې په دې پوښتنې باندې قایم وي کولی شي جواب ورکړي ورته، او مونږ ټول به د هغه نه هغه لیسنینګ کوو، مونږ به ټول اورو.
خب تشکر. دوستای دیگر هم نظر دارن؟
سلام علیکم.
احسان الله جان سلام. سلام خوش اومد.
علیکم سلام ندرت صاحب، خدا کنه که خوب باشین و برادرای دیگه هم خوب باشن. نظریاتی که شما ارائه کردین من خود شخصا کدام مشکلی ندارم و حاضر هستم فرض مثال در این گروپ هم اشتراک کنم، اگر موضوعی را فهمیده باشم با شما شریک کنم. اما یک موضوع را من میخوایم اشاره کنم و این که این موضوعات ریسرچ خودت ندرت صاحب بلد هستین که این مغلقیت خود داره دیگه. از این سلاید و از این لکچر ما نمیتونیم بیشتر از 30% یا 40% یا 20% برداشت داشته باشیم دیگه. به این خاطر در ضمنش هم تکست هم اگر ما شما ریویو بکنیم و یک کم ویدیو لکچر ببینیم، از مواد دیگه استفاده کنیم دیگه، شاید این موضوع برای ما یک کمی چی شود آسانتر شود دیگه. نظریاتی که شما ارائه کردین با من کدام مشکلی ندارم و انشالله اگر چیزی من یاد داشتم یا ضمن لکچر یاد گرفتم انشالله با شما شریک میکنم.
تشکر احسان الله خان. کسی دوستای دیگه هم نظر دارن؟ اوکی میریم فاینال میکنیم. به نظر من آیت الله جان درباره سشن روز دیگر همگی تقریبا موافق نیستن، اما یک کار دیگر بکنیم. قسمی که عبادالله جان گفتن ما فقط کوتاه اصلا اینا رو به نام یعنی اینتراکشن گروپ ها میگن یا اینتراکشن سشنی که ما شما با هم دیگر بحث بکنیم صحبت بکنیم. فقط میشد موضوعات داغ بگیریم در موضوعاتی که بسیار اساسی است. قسمی که احسان الله خان هم گفتن ممکن ما زیادتری موارد رو بفهمیم، جایی را که ما نفهمیدیم، جایی که بسیار یا مهم بودن یا جای کلیدی یا مو مثلا مو سشن روزی مو بودن، باز میشه که مو هایلایت مثلا هم مشارک کنیم. مثلا احسان الله خان مثلا یک قسمت تشریح بکنه میتونه که 50% که جایی که ما شما گنگی داشتیم یا گیچی داشته به حل شود، بعد 10% ما 5% سوال و جواب میکنیم، میرم میتونیم صفر بکنیم که ایرم میشه در آخر سشن هم انجام بدیم که میتونه که استاد هم وقت نگیریم خودمون انجام بدیم و یا اینکه یک وقت دیگر شود. اما موضوع ما که در گروه گفتم می است که گروپی باشد که در اونجا فقط دوستانی که اکتیو هستند به مورد چت نشود که ما و شما در گروه عمومی اگنو هستیم، میبینید که هر چیز نوشته میشود، شما میفهمید کدام ما و شما هم آمدن این مسیج وقتگیر به ما میشود. و من میگم که در دراز مدت زمانی که ما مشکل در قسمت دیگر مورد رو پیدا میکنیم، حداقل یک گروه هماهنگی باشد که ما بتونیم حل کنیم. اما او میتونه در گروه ماردولی ما باشد که در صحبت بکنیم، نیاز به گروه دیگر نشود. بازم به خاطری که شبکه کلانتر شود، ارتباط ما و شما خوب باشد، حالا هم صنفی هستیم، میشه شما رو شریک میکنیم. مثلا من شخصا واتساپ هم نوشته میکنم، شماره تماس هم هست، میتونیم در ارتباط باشیم. داشته باید به کار. حالا دیگر موضوع ما و شما امروز نیست، یه موضوع یک عمر است که انشاءالله در ارتباط می باشیم، در خدمت هستیم. دیگر اگر حرفی نباشد، تشکری بسیار زیاد از استادم تشکری کنیم و بعد خاتمه بدیم. اگر حرفی در این رابطه نظری هست خوب، نباشه باز تمام میکنیم.
انشالله موضوع دیگر به نظر ما که موضوع دیگر نمانده. وقتی استادم نگیریم دیگه دوستام شاید کار داشته باشن. دیگه اگر تشکری کنیم از استاد و خاتمه بدیم سشن بهتر خود بود.
Ma'am, thank you very much for your time. It might be boring for you or not.
Let me know about that important part of that feedback. Are they able to understand what we are discussing or not? First of all, second thing, how can I improve my understanding and your understanding in coming sessions? Okay, so please try to help me. Yes.
Okay, ma'am. So all those who are just participating and actively actually participating in the session is well professional people, and they actually know everything that you already discussed about the topics. And the discussion that we had actually was about some interaction groups where we can support each other. And of course, I just thought that maybe in the next sessions, and even when we are just starting the working on the dissertation, of course, there will be lots of supports needed from each of our colleagues and our classmates, and as well as to share our experience, ideas, as well as at the end of each session, to have 10 to 20 minutes of summary discussion in our local language, especially in Persian and as well as in Pashto. So they were all agreed with that. And the way that you are actually presenting that since post 2021 of August, I was working for 9 years with the one of the international university, which is called University of Central Asia. Maybe you know that about that.
Yes.
Yeah, I was the project manager of that for the Afghanistan, and that is why I knew very well about the methodology, the way of the presenting. That is why the one that I'm really entrusting for the session is you. Thank you very much for your presentation, and as well as the way that we are calling the Indian one of the democratic country, and as well as you that you are actually acting this democracy in democratic way for presenting. Thank you very much for everything. So we all agree, and let's give the time for the other classmates if they want to add some things. Otherwise, thank you very much. Stay safe and healthy.
I just want to add something. Promote your participants to ask me questions in their native language. They can write it down in the inbox, and you can translate those questions to me so that we can incorporate also those reflections or queries if there is any. And again, this is my request, not to stop, not to hold on those queries for the completion of the session. Even in the midway you can ask that, because sometimes you miss those questions. which are very important to you, because you people are supposed to write down several assignments, and those are required for those marks as well. We should not forget it. Okay, so this is my request, another request. And thank you very much for being a coordinator, and this kind of medium between your native language and my language. Thank you very much. Let's wind up today's session on my part here. And I can see Mohibur Rahman has raised a hand. So kindly discuss all those things as you were suggesting in your WhatsApp group. And we will be incorporating all those things in our coming session on next Monday morning. Okay? Monday evening, sorry. Thank you.
Well noted, ma'am. Thank you very much. So, thank you.
So again, Khuda Hafiz, bye bye, Namaskar, thank you.
Namaskar, namaskar, Khuda
God
Hafiz.
bless you. God bless you all.
Thank you. Manana.